Imagine this for a second. 58. That's the number of missing persons cases in Australia that detectives have recently reviewed as potentially linked to the country's most infamous serial killer, Ivan Milat. 58 potential victims, and yet only 7 murders were ever officially attributed to him. Now, ask yourself, how is it possible that police could have had evidence pointing toward Milat's involvement in dozens of other disappearances, but chose not to pursue them? Could it be a failure of the system, or something more deliberate? Tonight, I'm going to show you documents, testimony, and forgotten details the police would rather you never see. This isn't just about the backpacker murders you think you know. It's about the cases that were quietly reviewed, the families that were left waiting, and the uncomfortable truth about how far institutions will go to protect themselves, even at the cost of justice. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will change the way you think about the backpacker murders forever. When Ivan Milat was arrested in the mid-1990s, the relief across Australia was immediate. The so-called backpacker killer was finally behind bars. 7 lives had been taken in the Belanglo State Forest, and the nightmare was over. Or at least, that's what people were told. But what most of the public didn't know is that Milat's name had surfaced in connection to far more cases than those 7 homicides. Police forces across Australia, most notably in New South Wales, compiled a list. On that list were 58 unsolved disappearances and murders, stretching across multiple states and territories. Young travellers, students, backpackers. Many of them showed patterns that resembled Milat's known victims. One name stands out: German backpacker Nancy Grunwald, who vanished from Tasmania's east coast in 1993. She was just 26 years old, last seen riding a bicycle near Scamander, Tasmania. Her case was later ruled as foul play by the coroner. And yet, despite similarities to Milat's known pattern, no charges were ever brought. Here's the question: how could dozens of such cases, so similar, be quietly set aside? Was it jurisdictional confusion, departmental politics, or something deeper? Nancy was not alone. Dozens of cases spanning Victoria, New South Wales, and Tasmania carry certain features: young people travelling alone, disappearing suddenly, never found again. So here's the lingering question: how is it that this extraordinary list of unsolved homicides and disappearances did not lead to further investigations or charges against Ivan Milat? The answer, according to insiders, is both simple and frustrating. Because these cases spanned multiple states, no single police force wanted to take full ownership. Departments passed responsibility back and forth. Files gathered dust. Leads went cold. Families were left waiting for answers that never came. Even worse, there was pressure to keep the narrative clean. Milat was locked up. 7 murders had been solved. The story was neat, contained. Reopening dozens of other disappearances would mean money, time, and political embarrassment. So the rest remained in silence. Let's revisit Nancy Grunwald for a moment. 26 years old, from Germany, a traveller with plans and hope. On 12th March 1993, she vanished while riding a hired red mountain bike along Tasmania's east coast, or about 5 kilometres south of Scamander. Later, a coroner found she died between St Helens and Bicheno as the result of foul play. Her possessions, her bike, all lost. No trace has ever been found. Many believe Nancy's disappearance resembles the Belanglo murders in certain ways. Young person travelling solo, disappearance without obvious cause. Yet, while her name appears on the list of 58 cases NS Dollars police have reviewed for potential Milat links, there is no publicly verified evidence that any legal charges or formal linkage have been made. Nancy wasn't the only case. Across Victoria and New South Wales, many missing person and cold case files share certain features. Similar victim profiles, travelling alone, last seen in remote areas. But in most of those, the connections are speculative, not confirmed. Here's a question for you to consider. If patterns were obvious, why were they not connected earlier? Could modern forensic techniques, had they been available, have revealed a larger network of Milat's crimes decades ago? And the evidence? Investigators have stated there is an enormous amount of data from multiple jurisdictions. Victoria Police themselves list over 200 unsolved homicide cold cases. Still, no official confirmation exists that all leads were fully followed. So the story becomes this. Evidence exists, but many leads remain unresolved. And the haunting question returns. How many of those 200-plus cold cases could have been examined more deeply if every clue had been pursued decades ago? Calls for a parliamentary inquiry into the Milat-linked cases have been made in New South Wales. But so far, progress has been slow. Requests for documents and lists have been met with delays or limited release, frustrating both families and advocates. Why has it taken over 30 years for credible public acknowledgement of these dozens of other potential Milat cases? Is this just bureaucratic inertia or intentional reluctance? There are reports of senior police officials being hesitant to release files or fully cooperate with transparency efforts. And there are documented cases where oversight bodies criticised police for failing to act effectively in serious matters, raising questions about institutional responsibility. The human cost is real. Families who have waited decades for answers, and the possibility that other violent offenders may have remained undetected because patterns were not fully investigated. When institutional protection outweighs public safety, who truly suffers? Public trust has been eroded, and the shadow of silence continues to loom over Victoria, New South Wales, and beyond. Some analysts suggest that resource constraints and political costs may have discouraged full pursuit of all leads across multiple states. Others speculate that authorities feared revealing dozens more potential murders could damage Australia's reputation as a safe destination for tourists. But there is no public evidence this was an official policy. Here's a sharp question. How often does the pursuit of public image override the pursuit of justice? What is clear? The 58 cases reviewed in New South Wales are still under investigation. Victoria still has over 200 cold homicide cases, many of which remain unresolved. Oversight bodies, including IBAC, have issued reports highlighting systemic failures, procedural errors, and gaps in transparency. Yet formal accountability mechanisms remain limited. When patterns are ignored and accountability is absent, how many more victims are silenced forever? The families deserve answers. And that is why independent oversight is critical. If you want to hear more cases that the police don't want you to see, subscribe so you don't miss future investigations. Because the truth is out there. And sometimes, the silence tells us more than the evidence ever could.